In this video, I'm going to share my journey on how I went from zero cybersecurity experience to completing HackTheBox's certified bug bounty hunter path, CBBH for short, and passing the CBBH exams in 3 months. And yes, I did that while working a full-time job and balancing a family life. So if you're feeling a little overwhelmed or maybe discouraged and feel like you missed your chance into getting into ethical hacking or penetration testing, trust me when I say this, you're not alone. I was right there too. So rest assured, I'm here to share some tips and tricks that helped me push through those trying times. Now, this video will be divided into 3 parts. The first part, I'll be providing you an overview of the CBBH, who it's for, and what it involves. And this is especially for those who are completely new to ethical hacking. And if you know all of that, or you're already on the CBBH path, feel free to jump to part 2. Part 2 is where I'll be walking you through my methodology, the study strategies that I use, and the tools that I use. And finally, for part 3, I'll be sharing my personal exam experiences and some tips to help you pass with flying colors. All right, so diving into part 1 now. So who is the CBBH for exactly? Let's take a look at the website. And they're showing the target audience is for entry-level bug bounty hunters, junior web application penetration testers, and web developers. So I fall into the web developer category. I have experience building websites in the past. I know JavaScript, I know TypeScript, I've done Next.js projects, but I feel like even if you don't fall into one of these categories, I feel like you don't need to really for the CBBH. You can get through it without being in one of these. It's one of those things though that it is going to be an extra hurdle to get over. As an example, I have web dev experience, but I know a lot of my friends don't have web dev experience and they have Linux experience. And I really lacked Linux experience when I started this path. So they needed to learn more web dev things like learning JavaScript, and I needed to learn more Linux things. So it depends on the person. And even if, let's say, you don't even know Linux or have any web dev experience at all, this is completely fine as well. But it will be a little bit more frustrating because you will be learning just an additional thing as well. Not only will you be learning Linux and how to use it and how to run it and how to install it, but you'll be learning the syntax for JavaScript and all the syntax for normal HTML websites going forward. So again, not a huge thing, but it's just another step that you need to learn. All right, so now getting into the job role. So these are the modules. There are 20 modules in the CBBH. And when you go down that path, you can see here on the left side, there is a path. And I am logged into the academy.hackthebox.com. You'll see here a path open up. There is the job roles path. And you'll see here the bug bounty hunter path with 20 modules, and I've already completed it 100%. And there you go. So here are the necessary cubes acquired. I have a silver annual subscription, so I get everything through that, but that is that. So let's go back into the exams portion of it because it does show the modules a little bit more in depth here. All right, so 20 modules, starting with web requests and introduction to web applications, web proxies, information gathering. All of this is pretty easy stuff. I feel like when you're going to start running into roadblocks, or at least trying to troubleshoot certain issues, is when you start getting into FFUF. Now, some people may pick up FFUF really quickly. Some people may get the syntax wrong or the flags wrong here and there. But FFUF is kind of one of those things that you'll just need to practice over and over. But it is a super easy module. It is tier 0. Once you get through that, you're going to have that skill going forward. Then you get into JavaScript deobfuscation. Again, another easy one. It starts ramping up in the cross-site scripting. If you don't know anything about cross-site scripting or how that is, this is kind of the first hurdle that you're going to start getting into, followed by once you understand that, and I feel like you should not really skip through this or look at the solutions too heavily. You should have a good grasp of cross-site scripting, because cross-site scripting is one of those really fundamental attacks that you need to know going forward. Whenever you see a website and you see a form, you're going to think cross-site scripting. And then you're going to think of like, okay, what can I use or what tests can I run to test if this cross-site scripting injection is possible or not. Moving into now a medium difficulty SQL injection fundamentals. This is when you're going to start having issues. If you don't know SQL, if you don't know any of the syntaxes or the commands, this is when you're going to start having roadblocks. But again, don't rush through it. Take your time. This is kind of like your first hurdle. Once you get through this, the SQL maps is a lot easier to understand, because SQL injections, SQL maps is kind of like the tool to automate the SQL injection fundamentals. But it's super necessary to understand the SQL injections fundamentals before you start using SQL map wherever you can, because there are some type of ramifications for using SQL map incorrectly. So best know the fundamentals before using tools like SQL map. Then going back into the medium tiers, these are kind of the block here, the first three heavy blocks where you get into command injections, file upload attacks, and server-side attacks. This is the bulk of, where people start getting frustrated. I think I got pretty frustrated on these when going through it. I just managed to take them slowly, take good notes, because I understand at the bottom of it was like you're just checking sanitation or validation, and seeing what works or what doesn't. And taking crystal clear notes does go a long way with these. And again, don't get too frustrated. If you need breaks, take breaks. But this is going to be your bulk. Getting into the login brute forcing, I didn't really have much issues with that, nor did I have really any issues with broken authentication. Web attacks. Web attacks was probably one of the more trickier ones, especially getting into XXE and trying to understand that, and pairing that with certain other modules, because once you get into this point, you may be pairing certain modules together for the skill assessments. It's one of those things. Once you get further in, I know it's going to be a little bit tricky to memorize or keep track of all these modules and all these commands. That's why it's super important to take notes, condense them down, and have good organized notes. Moving on from file inclusion, session security, didn't really have any difficulty with these ones. The web API I had a lot of fun with, and I think that's a super important one that I really enjoyed, the web APIs. I think that's more to my experience, because as a web developer, I have a better understanding of web service and API attacks, but it is what it is. I think once I got to this point, I was kind of relieved, because I had a good understanding of all the fundamentals for the beginning ones. I may have struggled a little bit with the web attacks for like the XSE or the file upload ones or the command injections, but overall feeling very comfortable once I got to this point. And hacking WordPress, that's kind of was an easy one. The thing that I got frustrated with was the bug bounty hunting process. I feel like they could upgrade that, but I'll get into that later into the video. All right, so with all of that, that's pretty much the modules for that. So let's go into part let's go into the next part. All right, so for part 2, for context, I actually started off with zero experience on the TryHackMe platform on their web browser virtual machine. And it's a really great platform, which was way less intimidating and a lot less confusing, especially with how HackTheBox has several different platforms, such as like the machines and CTFs and boxes. And then they got the HackTheBox Academy, and then they got some other CTF thing. And it's nice that they're all linked, but really confusing for a newcomer. Now, around the second to third week of TryHackMe, I did become comfortable enough with the foundational material and learn how to set up a proper virtual machine, such as Kali Linux, before I actually started down the HackTheBox Academy path, which I was fortunate enough to win a silver annual plan voucher from one of Gar's Twitch streams. And well, when you win something like that, you know, you just can't back down or make excuses from actually completing it, right? So that's exactly what I had to do. So I began down the academy path, and I started taking the old school pen and paper notes, which I outgrew fairly quickly, by the way, because there is a lot of notes you need to take. But about around the 25 to 30% mark, I felt really lacking in my ability to move around Kali Linux because, well, up to this point, everything has been web-based focused. So I felt the real need to fix this weakness with the Unix path from pentesterlab.com, which got me a lot more comfortable with Kali. Afterwards, diving back into the modules, where a few of them I did have to spend a lot longer trying to understand or at least absorb what was happening. And this is going to vary person to person based on experience. But I felt like if I was spending way too long on a skill assessment or a module, like I reviewed the entire module and then I reviewed it all over again and I still got nowhere, then I'm going to take advantage of the solution button. And even if I solved it without requiring any help, I would always look at the solution to see the intended path, which most of the time I found it would show me a better way of doing it. Now, sometimes, some rare times, they did show me a worse way of doing it, odd enough. In the end, it's all about how much time you want to invest versus actually learning something and moving forward. And I stay long enough during that pain phase where you know you spent way too long, right? You're going to remember it. Even now, when I look at certain modules, I remember very clearly this part was a challenge, or this phase was really difficult to grasp. I need to learn it better, and I need to rewrite my notes on it. Once I completed the CBBH course, I followed these 3 key steps for my quick path review of all the modules. The first key step was developing my own methodology. In other words, taking the knowledge that I've gained and built a structured approach to the assessments. This methodology is like your game plan, laying out the sequence of steps to follow from the reconnaissance to the exploitation to the reporting. And don't let this be confused with number 2. Number 2 being creating a personal checklist based on the methodology that you have, drafting a practical checklist that outlines specific actions and tests for each phase of an assessment. And this checklist will serve as a quick reference tool to keep you on track, making sure nothing critical is overlooked, or more importantly, keep you on track from maybe digging too deep into a rabbit hole. Number 3, maintaining strong, organized notes. Throughout your learning and practice, building a set of organized notes that include essential techniques, examples, and tips from the HackTheBox machines, if you do any of them. You don't have to. But having well-structured notes will allow you to quickly reference complex techniques, tools, or bypasses when you need them. At the end of it all, I had to rewrite my notes a total of 3 times. First was pen and paper, and the second was using Notion, fully detailed, And the third was a lean version of everything on Obsidian, all of which keeping in mind those 3 key steps that I mentioned earlier. Now, a very important question I've gotten asked several times: if I used any outside material in my learning path. Well, yes, but very limited, only fixing certain gaps that I saw in myself. The first being that Unix with Pentester Lab. The second being my time management focus, which means on any errand that I wasn't behind my desk learning, I was reading a book, and the book was The Bug Bounty Book Camp by Vicky V. And I was reading that at the gym, picking up my kid, or even on the toilet. Whatever you got to do, right? And last tip about supplemental materials, probably the most important one in my mind, is I didn't spend any needless time or energy looking for outside materials related to the content I was going to be tested on. I strictly focused on HackTheBox Academy. Everything is in there that you need to know to pass the exam. All right, part 3 now, the exam. In order to take the CBBH exam, you first must complete the entire Bug Bounty Hunter skills path to 100%. And that includes all their modules, their labs, their skill assessments. And once you complete all that, you'll be able to activate your exam voucher and enter it into the exam. Now, it is worth noting here, once you enter into the exam, the timer starts. So be prepared before you click that button. You cannot cancel an active exam session. You just got to make the best of it. But don't worry, the voucher includes 1 free retake. And some of the staff have mentioned in their talks or their CUBE talks to kind of treat the first exam like a test run. You don't need to pass the first time. You have 2 chances. When you enter the exam portal, you're presented with the rules of engagement and a countdown in the corner. Now, the rules of engagement describe the instructions of the exam and should be read very carefully. In fact, multiple times. It pretty much describes the scenario, the in-scope targets, the requirements to pass the exam, the targets that are explicitly out of scope, and a report template for you to download. Otherwise, the exam portal should look pretty familiar to you. There's a panel to access your OpenVPN file or spawn your Pwnbox instance if you prefer that, and a panel to enter in your flags. You're given 7 days from the time you enter the exam to complete the exam, and this requires you to capture 80 points of the possible 100 and to submit a professionally written report complete with attack chains used and all the vulnerabilities discovered and their remediation. And ideally, you should spend up to probably 5 days on testing and then have 2 days on the report. The report itself should be a format in which the reader should copy and paste your proof of concepts or can at least follow along with your work. Now, if you fail to reach the required number of points, submit a report with your findings as they are. The HackTheBox certification team will provide you with some feedback and a nudge for your next attempt. And as mentioned before, a free retake is included in the exam voucher. However, it must be started within 14 days of receiving feedback. So keep that in mind. So with the exam, pace yourself. Take proper notes. It will help you write your report so much faster. And in fact, that's kind of what I did. I took some quick notes as a rough draft, and then I started my report writing right away. And while working on the first few flags, another important thing I had to do was when I started writing the report more in depth, I felt that the Bug Bounty Hunter process module, which is the last module for the CBBH path for writing reports, was really light for me. So I actually, during the exam, started doing the documentation and reporting module, which is not included in the CBBH path, by the way, so that I could just get a better sense on how to write a better report. And I may have overkilled the exam considering, the feedback that I received, But personally, I'd like to see a better report writing module for the CBBH that is in between the Bug Bounty Hunter one and the documentation and reporting module from CPTS, considering that the CBBH exam is a commercially graded exam. Now, follow the 3 key steps, your methodology, your own, checklist, and a fast way to look through organized notes, and take breaks. If you're stuck on something, don't rabbit hole, move on to something else. That's pretty much my overview of this course and the exam. If you have any questions, leave it in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe. Helps me with the algorithm. And I'll see you guys in the next video.